May I share with you an interesting story of one of the finest writers in all English literature. I've long been a fan of Robert Service. Long known as the Bard of the North, his stories, written in poetic verse about characters who came from all over the world to seek their fortunes during the Alaska-Yukon Gold Rush days, stories that have enjoyed everlasting popularity. Robert Service was born January 16, 1874, in Lancaster, England. He began his writing career early, when he was in just the 6th grade. As a class writing assignment, he wrote a short story in poetic style. It amazed the teacher, so much so that he sent it to the local paper. The paper published it. The public response was such that his teacher encouraged him to write more. Thus, an amazing career was launched by this young boy. By the time he was in the 10th grade, a book publisher had become aware of his unique talent. He approached his father and offered a book publishing contract. Shortly, royalties started pouring in. Before graduating from high school, Robert Service was a successful author. His father, though, insisted he learn banking and follow his father's career. "Writing isn't a good, dependable career choice," he said. The family immigrated to Canada, and Robert's father got him a job as a teller at the same bank where he secured employment. Robert soon married. Then 2 children were added to the family. He decided to emigrate to the United States and moved to San Francisco. He got a job as a bank teller again with the San Francisco Bank. But hearing stories that were going out all over the world about fabulous wealth being found in the streams and rivers of the Alaska-Yukon area, he decided to ask the bank if it might be a good idea for him to move to Alaska and open a branch of the bank there. "Those gold miners will need a safe place to store their gold," he reasoned. The bank agreed, and Service was off on a journey that would forever alter his life. The new branch bank he opened in Dawson Creek soon had miners coming in, opening accounts, and telling Service the most amusing stories. Service was intrigued with the personalities and stories they were telling him. His creative imagination ran wild. He loved to be with the miners and would often visit local saloons. Ever the consummate banker, Service always appeared in suit, white shirt, and tie, even when visiting the saloons. Every time he showed up, invariably he had an immediate audience. They loved to have him tell his stories, which he always was able to recite from memory. One that became probably his most popular always had his audience's rapt attention. Service would take a seat on a bar stool and lean back against the bar. The bartender immediately poured him a jigger of hooch. Service would pick it up. Then he would slowly gesture to his audience, moving his jigger from one side of the saloon to the other, making a little acknowledgement to each person he made eye contact with. Finally, he'd hold his drink out and say, "Salute!" Numerous voices echoed back, "Hear, hear!" A good swig of hooch. Then he'd set his glass down on the bar and begin reciting his most often requested story. "There are strange things done in the midnight sun by the men who moil for gold, and the Arctic trails have their secret tales that could make your blood run cold. The northern lights have seen queer sights. But the queerest they ever did see was that night on the marsh of Lake Labarge, where I cremated Sam McGee. Now, Sam McGee was from Tennessee, where the cotton blooms and blows, and why he left his home in the South to roam round the pole, God only knows. He was always cold, but the land of gold seemed to hold him like a spell. Though he'd often say in his homely way that he'd sooner live in hell. On Christmas Day, we were mushing our way over the Dawson Trail. Talk of your cold. Through the parka's fold, it stabbed like a driven nail. If our eyes we closed, then our lashes froze till sometimes we couldn't see. It wasn't much fun, but the only one to whimper was Sam McGee. And that very night, as we lay packed tight in our robes beneath the snow, the dogs were fed and the stars o'erhead were dancing heel and toe. He turned to me and, "Cap," says he, "I'll cash in this trip, I guess. And if I do, I'm asking you won't refuse my last request." Well, he seemed so low I couldn't say no. Then he said with a sort of moan, "It's the cursed cold, and it's got right hold till I'm chilled clean through to me bones. Yet 'tain't being dead. It's me awful dread of the icy grave that pains. So I want you to swear that foul or fair, you'll cremate me last remains." A pal's last need is a thing to heed, and I swore I would not fail. And we started on at the crack of dawn, but God, he looked ghastly pale. He crouched there on the sleigh and raved all day of his home in Tennessee. And before nightfall, a corpse is all that was left of Sam McGee. There wasn't a breath in that land of death, and I hurried horror-driven, with a corpse half hid that I couldn't get rid because of a promise given. It was last of the sleigh, but it seemed to say, "You may tax your brawn and brains, but you promised true, and now it's up to you to cremate me last remains." A promise made is a debt unpaid, and the trail has its own stern code. In the days to come, though my lips were numb, and in my heart how I cursed that load. In the long, long night, by the pale moonlight, while the huskies round in a ring howled out their woes to the homeless snows. Ah, how I loathe that thing. Yet every day that quiet clay seemed heavier and heavier to grow. But on I went, though the dogs were spent and the grub was getting low. The trail was bad, I felt half mad, but I swore I would not give in, and I'd often sing to that hateful thing. And it hearkened back with a grin, till I came to the marsh of Lake Labarge, and a derelict there lay. It was jammed in the ice, but I saw in a try she was called the Alice May.
I looked at it. I thought a bit. I looked at my frozen chum. Then, here, said I, with a sudden cry, is my crematorium. Some planks I tore from the old boat's floor, and I lit the boiler afire. Some coal I found that was lying round, and I heaped the fuel higher. The flames just soared, the furnace roared. Such a blaze you seldom see. Then I burrowed a hole in the glowing coals, and I shoved in old Sam McGee. Then I took a hike, for I didn't like to hear him sizzle so. The heavens scowled and the huskies howled, and the icy wind began to blow. It was icy cold, but the hot sweat rolled down my cheeks, and I don't know why. And the greasy smoke, like an inky cloak, went streaking off down the sky. I don't know how long in the snow I wrestled with grisly fear, but the stars came out and danced about. Ere again I ventured near. I was sick with dread, but I bravely said, I'll just take a peek inside, for I guess he's cooked and it's time I looked. So the door I opened wide, and there sat Sam, looking cool and calm in the heart of that furnace roar. And he wore a smile you could see a mile, and he said, Cap, please close that door. It's fine in here, but I greatly fear you're going to let in the cold and storm. Since I left Plumtree down in Tennessee, this is the first time I've been warm. Yes, there are strange things done in the midnight sun by the men who moil for gold. And the Arctic trails have their secret tales that can make your blood run cold. The northern lights have seen queer sights, but the queerest they ever did see was that night on the marge of Lake LaBarge, where I cremated Sam McGee. Robert Service.
Robert W. Service, Bard of the Yukon and teller of tall tales. I had an event in my life that made Robert Service very special to me. I had a longtime friend, Chuck Keene, who lived in Juneau, Alaska. We were both wildlife filmmakers. Over the years, we had collaborated on a couple of TV shows. Chuck called me one day and told me that the Alaska Tourism Department had asked him if he could make a video using live local Juneau, Alaska folks as actors, acting out 3 of the Robert Service poems. The video to be part of the upcoming commemoration and centennial celebration of the Alaska-Yukon Gold Rush of 1897. He asked me if I would have time and be interested in helping him with the project. I exclaimed, Chuck, I'd love to. I know you will enjoy this video that we produced.
was 1897. The great North Country, virtually untouched and unknown, was about to enter the history books and create an excitement that would send a calling all over the world. Gold had been discovered in Alaska and the Yukon. Mountains of it, rivers full of it, and shorelines that glittered with gold. Unto this land there came a young writer that would capture the love, misery, solitude, and imagination of every adventurer that would ever travel into the mighty North from that day on till the end of all time. Some say he created the blasted North with his pen. The deep valleys and towering peaks will always be there, just like the great bard wrote about them. His name was Robert Service, and his style of writing fit the land like a glove. The lure of gold brought hordes of characters and would-be miners from every corner of the earth. Some were tough when they came. All were tough that stayed. The land and the men that trod the fabled trails of the North were wilder than any writer could ever tell it. But Robert Service gave it all a purpose. He wrote heart and forgiveness into the raging storm, and he wrote humor into the hardships of the trail. Today, they say the gold has all been mined out of Alaska and the Yukon. But is it really gone? Or is it just the passing of those early day tough ones that found it? Let's journey now back into time and relive one of Robert Service's greatest poems, The Spell of the Yukon.
I wanted the gold, and I sought it. I scrambled and mucked like a slave. Was it famine or scurvy, I fought it. I hurled my youth into a grave. I wanted the gold, and I got it. Came out with a fortune last fall. Yet somehow life's not what I thought it. And somehow the gold isn't all. No, there's the land. Have you seen it? It's the cussedest land that I know. From the big, dizzy mountains that screen it to the deep, death-like valleys below. Some say God was tired when he made it. Some say it's a fine land to shun. Maybe. But there's some as would trade it for no land on earth, and I'm one. You come to get rich, damn good reason. You feel like an exile at first. You hate it like hell for a season, and then you're worse than the worst. It grips you like some kinds of sinning. It twists you from foe to a friend. It seems it's been since the beginning. It seems it will be to the end. I've stood on some mighty-mouthed hollow that's plumb full of hush to the brim. I've watched the big husky sun wallow in crimson and gold and grow dim, till the moon set the pearly peaks gleaming, and the stars tumbled out neck and crop, and I've thought that I surely was dreaming, with the peace of the world piled on top. The summer no sweeter was ever, the sunshiny woods all athrill, the grayling a-leap in the river, the bighorn asleep on the hill, the strong life that never knows harness, the wilds where the caribou call, the freshness, the freedom, the farness. Oh God, how I'm stuck on it all. The winter, the brightness that blinds you, the white land locked tight as a drum, the cold fear that follows and finds you, the silence that bludgeons you dumb. The snows that are older than history, the woods where the weird shadows slant, the stillness, the moonlight, the mystery. I've bade 'em goodbye, but I can't. There's a land where the mountains are nameless and the rivers all run God knows where. There are lives that are erring and aimless and deaths that just hang by a hair. There are hardships that nobody reckons. There are valleys unpeopled and still. There's a land, oh, it beckons and beckons. And I want to go back, and I will. They're making my money diminish. I'm sick of the taste of champagne. Thank God, when I'm skinned to a finish, I'll pike to the Yukon again. I'll fight, and you bet it's no sham fight. It's hell, but I've been there before, and it's better than this by a damn sight. So me for the Yukon once more. There's gold, and it's hunting and haunting. It's luring me on as of old. Yet it isn't the gold that I'm wanting so much as just finding the gold. It's the great, big, broad land way up yonder. It's the forests where silence has lease. It's the beauty that thrills me with wonder. It's the stillness that fills me with peace.
Wherever gold was found, a town sprung up. Saloons, dance halls, theaters, trading posts, and tent camps. Nome, during its heyday, had 48 saloons open around the clock and 52 lawyer shops. Skagway was Soapy Smith's town, and yes, you can find his tombstone right today among Skagway's finest. Some say he's still the most powerful man in town. This was the jumping-off place for the gold-rich Klondike, deep in the heart of the Yukon. Perhaps Dawson City was the most famous of all the mining towns, and Robert Service once wrote that no place on earth in such a short span hustled more souls to hell. It was here in Dawson City on Whitehorse that he wrote and created one of the most infamous characters that ever stole a woman's heart.
Pardon me, ma'am. 1,000 pleasures. Haven't we met someplace before, ma'am?
Join us now as we relive that century-old yarn, the shooting of Dangerous Dan McGrew.
A bunch of the boys were whooping it up in the Malamute Saloon. The kid that handles the music box was hitting a jagtime tune. With his back to the corner in a poker game sat Dangerous Dan McGrew. And watching his luck was his knight of love, the lady that's known as Lou. When out of the night, which was 50 below, and into the din and glare, there stumbled a miner fresh from the creeks. Dog dirty and loaded for bear. He looked like a man with a foot in the grave and scarcely the strength of a louse. Yet he toted a poke of dust on the bar and called for drinks for the house. None could place the stranger's face, though we searched ourselves for a clue. But we drank to his health, hear, 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 hear. And the last to drink was Dangerous Dan McGrew. There are men that somehow just grip your eyes and hold them hard like a spell. And such was he, though he looked to me like a man who had lived in hell. With a face most hair and the dreary stare of a dog whose day is done, as he belted down shots of barbed wire hooch, and the drops fell one by one. I got to wondering who he was and figuring what he'd do. I turned my head, and there watching him was the lady that's known as Lou. His eyes went rubbering round the room. He seemed in a sort of daze, till at last the old piano fell in the way of his wandering gaze. The ragtime kid was having a drink. There was no one else on the stool, so the stranger stumbles across the floor and flops down there like a fool. In his buckskin shirt that was glazed with dirt, he sat, and I saw him sway. Then he clutched the keys with his gnarled hands. But, my God, how the man could play. Have you ever been out in the great alone, when the moon was awful clear, and the icy mountains hemmed you in with a silence you almost could hear, with only the cry of a timber wolf, and you camped there in the cold, a half-dead thing in a stark dead world, clean mad for the muck called gold? While high overhead in green, blue, and red, the northern lights danced in bars. Well, then you've a hunch what his music meant. Hunger and night and the stars. A hunger not of the belly kind that's banished with bacon and beans, but the gnawing hunger of a lonely man for a home and all that it means. A fireside far from the cares that are, four walls and a roof above, but oh so crowded full of joy and crowned with a woman's love. A woman more dear than all the world, and true as heaven is true. But God, how ghastly she looks through her rouge, the lady that's known as Lou. Then on a sudden the music changed, so soft that you scarce could hear, and you felt that your life had been looted clean of all that you once held dear. That someone had stolen the woman you loved, that her love was the devil's lie, and your guts were gone, and the best for you was to crawl away and die. 'Twas the crowning cry of a heart's despair, and it moved you through and through.
I guess I'll make it a spread, Misere, said dangerous Dan McGrew.
The music almost died away. Then it burst like a pent-up flood, and it seemed to say, "Repay, repay," and his eyes were glazed with blood. The thought came back of an ancient wrong, and it stung like a frozen lash. And the urge awoke to kill. To kill. And the music stopped with a crash. The stranger turned. His eyes, they burned in a most peculiar way. In his buckskin shirt that was glazed with dirt, he sat, and I saw him sway. Then his lips went in a sort of grin, and he spoke. His voice was calm.
"Boys,"
says he,
"you don't know me, and none of you care a damn. but I want to state, and my words are straight, and I'll bet my poke they're true, that one of you is a hound of hell, and that one is Dan McGrew.
Yo, shit! I ducked my head. The lights went out. Two guns blazed in the dark. A woman screamed.
And the lights went up, and two men lay stiff and stark. Pitched on his head and pumped full of lead was dangerous Dan McGrew, while the man from the creeks lay clutched to her breasts by the lady who's known as Lou. These are the simple facts of the case, and I guess I ought to know. They say the stranger was crazed with hooch, and I'm not denying it so. I'm not so wise as those lawyer guys, but strictly between us two, the woman who kissed him and pinched his poke was the lady that's known as Lou.
Yeah, the hidden eggs didn't help him any.
During the Gold Rush era, 10,000 miles of trails were developed in Alaska and at least that many more in the Yukon. The Trail of 98 from Skagway to the Klondike was perhaps the most famous. The trail from Sheep Creek to Nome was 1,000 miles of pure hell. And a century later, the famous dog team race called the Iditarod symbolizes not just the greatest race left on Earth, but it's really a tribute to those long ago giants of the trail, both men and dogs that hauled freight to Nome during the dead cold of winter. As the Gold Rush faded into history, so did most of the trails. Oh, it's true, some of the trails became highways, and some are still out there hidden from view, just beyond where modern adventurers travel. But there is one trail, one journey that Robert Service made immortal for all time. And no trip to the mighty north or a story about the cold would be complete without hearing the cremation of Sam McGee.
There are strange things done in the midnight sun by the men who toil for gold, and the Arctic trails have their secret tales that could make your blood run cold. The northern lights have seen queer sights, but the queerest they ever did see was that night on the marsh of Lake LaBarge, where I cremated Sam McGee. Now, Sam McGee was from Tennessee, where the cotton blooms and blows. And why he left his home in the South to roam round the pole, God only knows. He was always cold, but the land of gold seemed to hold him like a spell, though he'd often say, in his homely way, how he'd sooner live in hell. On Christmas Day, we were mushing our way over the Dawson Trail. Talk of your cold. Through the parka's fold, it stabbed like a driven nail. If our eyes we'd close and our lashes froze, till sometimes we couldn't see. It wasn't much fun, but the only one to whimper was Sam McGee. And that very night, as we lay packed tight in our robes beneath the snow, the dogs were fed and the stars o'erhead were dancing heel and toe. He turned to me and, "Cap," says he, "I'll cash in this trip, I guess. And if I do, I'm asking you won't refuse my last request." Well, he seemed so low I couldn't say no. And then he said with a sort of moan, "The cursed cold, it's got right hold, till I'm chilled clean through to my bones. Yet, 'tain't being dead, it's my awful dread of the icy grave that pains. So I want you to swear that foul or fair, you'll cremate my last remains." The pal's last need is the thing to heed, and I swore I wouldn't fail. And we started on at the crack of dawn. But God, he looked ghastly pale. He crouched there on the sleigh and raved all day of his home in Tennessee. And before nightfall, a corpse is all that was left of Sam McGee. Sam, I promise you I'll keep my word. There wasn't a breath in that land of death, and I hurried, horror-driven, with a corpse half hid that I couldn't get rid because of the promise given. It was lashed to the sleigh, but it seemed to say, "You may tax your brawn and brains, but you promised true. Now it's up to you to cremate my last remains." A promise made is a debt unpaid, and the trail has its own stern code. In the days to come, though my lips were numb, and in my heart, how I cursed that load.
Pull! Pull! You gotta pull! Pull!
In the long, long night, in the pale moonlight, while the huskies round in a ring howled out their woes to the homeless snows. God, how I loathed that thing. Yet every day that quiet clay seemed heavier and heavier to grow. But on I went, though the dogs were spent and the grub was getting low.
Pull! Pull! You gotta pull! Pull!
The trail was bad. I felt half mad. But I swore I would not give in, and I'd often sing to that damn hateful thing. And it harkened back with a grin. Till I came to the marsh of Lake LaBarge, and a derelict there lay. It was jammed in the ice, but I saw in a trice she was called the Alice May. I looked at it. I thought a bit. I looked at my frozen chum. Then here, said I, with a sudden cry, is my crematorium.
Some boards.
I tore from the old boat's floor, and I lit the boiler afire. Some coal I found that was lying round, and I heaped the fuel higher. The flames just soared, the furnace roared, such a blaze you seldom see. Then I burrowed a hole in the glowing coals, and I shoved in old Sam McGee. Then I took a hike, for I didn't like to hear him sizzle so. The heavens scowled, and the huskies howled, and the icy wind began to blow. It was icy cold, but the hot sweat rolled down my cheek, and I don't know why. And the greasy smoke, like an inky cloak, went streaking off down the sky. I don't know how long in the snow I wrestled with grisly fear, but the stars came out and danced about ere again I ventured near. I was sick with dread, but I bravely said, I'll just take a peek inside, for I guess he's cooked and it's time I looked. So the door I opened wide, and there sat Sam, looking cool and calm in the heart of that furnace roar. And he wore a smile you could see a mile, and he said,
Please, Cap, please close that door. It's fine in here, but I greatly fear you're going to let in the cold and storm. Since I left Plumtree down in Tennessee, this is the first time I've been warned.
Yes, there are strange things done in the midnight sun by the men who toil for gold. And the Arctic trails have their secret tales that could make your blood run cold. The Northern Lights have seen queer sights, but the queerest they ever did see was that night on the marsh of Lake LaBarge, where I cremated Sam McGee.
More than 100 years ago, the gold miners offloaded right here in Juneau and Skagway. They trekked on to Whitehorse, Dawson City, and the far corners of the Yukon, in search for what was really and truly the thrill of a lifetime. Oh, it's true. Some said they'd come only for the gold. And others said they came in hopes of starting a new life in the great big new land. Over a century later, they're still arriving here for the same old reasons as way back then. The dream of a real adventure. The gold rush brought thousands and thousands to our borders to sink their pick into our mountains and dredge our streams. But only a few really found the yellow metal. Those who stayed and gave it a good look found much more than gold. They found the awesome, unforgettable beauty of the land, the same as those who come today. Down through the ages, the writings of Robert Service have always been the North Country's greatest ambassador. When he wrote about a trail, the trail was there, and it led to somewhere with a real purpose. He wrote about the all alone, where the weird shadows slant, and we've all bade them goodbye, but we can't. He wrote about the lure of the little voices, luring you on as of old. So if you're one of those that has heard the wilderness beckon, and if you're heading up to Alaska come spring, come just as excited and eager as a young child. Let this trip to Alaska and the Yukon be your journey back to the wild.
I want to make this video a special tribute to my longtime friend Chuck King. Unfortunately, he passed away early at just 65. His long career making films included military service, photographing the war in Vietnam, and numerous film projects in Hollywood. But it was always Alaska, its wildlife and scenery that he loved, a love he shared with his lifelong companion, Karen. I felt so honored when Chuck asked my assistance with his centennial commemoration video of those gold miners and Robert Service's poetic stories. Chuck brought hours of excellent photography to my Salt Lake City studio, and we spent 19 long-hour days editing it all together. By the way, the Service family has made 4 book volumes of all of Robert Service's poetic stories available. You can order them at Amazon Books or any other major book distributor. For your home library, if you would like a copy of this video in current video formats, I will make it for you in either DVD video or on your more modern USB. I'll make it and ship either to you for $14.95. Contact me by email, mel@melhardman.com. In the subject line of your email, please type Robert Service Video. As an added benefit, I will also put on your USB thumb drive the first part of this program, me impersonating Robert Service, in the way he entertained those old gold miners every time he visited with them in the saloons of Dawson Creek. If you've enjoyed this program, I'd really appreciate your subscribing to my YouTube channel and send this program to your friends. You'll notice that I've recorded several others of Robert Service's poetic stories. You can click on any of them and listen as I read that poem. Thank you for coming by.